Fans who've followed Tyrese Gibson for years are in shock after his emotional revelation. At 46, he's finally confirmed what so many feared was true, and the pain in his words has left hearts breaking all over the world. It all began with one question, a question that became an anthem for broken hearts around the world. How you gonna act like that? When Tyrese Gibson sang those words back in 2002, he wasn't just performing a song, he was giving voice to every heartbreak, every betrayal, every moment someone gave their all and got nothing in return. But years later, that same question came crashing back into his own life. Except this time, it didn't come from a lover, it came from the world. Because on September 2025, the man who once sang about love and loyalty found himself surrounded by flashing police lights outside his Los Angeles mansion, as officers raided his home and his 80-year-old grandmother was led away in handcuffs beside him. In one night, everything Tyrese stood for, his image, his legacy, his peace, was thrown into chaos. And the world couldn't believe what it was seeing. You won't believe how quickly life can flip when fate decides to strike. It started as an ordinary morning, calm, peaceful, nothing out of place, until that silence was shattered by chaos. The pounding of boots, the bark of police dogs, the echo of officers shouting Tyrese's name like he was a criminal on the run. Body cameras were rolling, neighbors were watching, and the world's eyes were about to turn toward his doorstep. Police claimed they were responding to reports that Tyrese's Cane Corso dogs had been involved in a violent incident. But what no one expected, what left everyone stunned, was who else was caught in the middle of it all. Right there, standing in the chaos, was his 80-year-old grandmother, the same woman who had raised him when his parents couldn't. Confused, trembling, surrounded by police. As officers led her away for questioning, Tyrese could only watch in disbelief, his world collapsing in real time. This was the same woman who had been in Tyrese's corner long before the fame, the money, or the flashing lights of Hollywood. His real ride or die. The one who shielded him from the chaos of Watts when he was just a boy trying to survive. And now, decades later, she stood surrounded by that same chaos all over again. Only this time, it wasn't the streets coming for her. It was the world her grandson had built, crumbling right in front of her eyes. But here's where it gets real. While the internet laughed, turning his pain into memes and hashtags about Tyrese's downfall, nobody stopped to ask how he got here. Because behind the headlines was a story few people ever bothered to see. The story of a boy from one of Los Angeles' toughest neighborhoods who fought his way out, only to find that success can sometimes be just another kind of battlefield. They didn't see the kid from the rough streets of Watts, who clawed his way out of poverty with nothing but a voice, a dream, and the kind of hunger that only comes from pain. They didn't see the man who went toe-to-toe with the music industry, fighting to keep real R&B alive while the world chased trends and auto-tune. Because that police raid, that viral moment, was just one chapter in a much deeper story. Long before the fame, before anyone ever called him Roman Pierce from Fast and Furious or Jody from Baby Boy, Tyrese Gibson was just a kid trying to make it out alive. Born on December 30th, 1978 in Watts, California, he grew up surrounded by struggle. His mother, battling alcoholism for nearly 3 decades. His father, lost to drugs and addiction. The odds weren't just stacked against him, they were buried on top of him. The world never gave him a chance, so he decided to take one anyway. However, destiny had other ideas because his grandma took over when his parents were unable to continue. She took on the roles of mother, guardian, and refuge for him. She kept him off the streets, made sure he got to school, and showed him what strength looked like when everything else failed. She would switch on the radio every night when the outside noise became too loud. The tiny abode was filled with the sounds of Teddy Pendergrass, Donny Hathaway, Stevie Wonder, and Marvin Gaye. There was more to those tunes than just music. They served as medicine. Still struggling with addiction, his mother would drink in the corner, but the music continued despite her suffering. Tyrese's heart was filled with that music, that soul, that emotion. His true education was that. This narrative is unique because R&B had an impact on him in more ways than one. He was reared by it. It turned become his destiny, his therapy, and his escape. Then everything changed one day. Tyrese found out he had a voice when he was young. Not just any voice, but a voice that simultaneously had strength and agony. The kind that caused people to pause and pay attention. The kind that resulted from hard work rather than studio gimmicks. He had the opportunity to sing in a Coca-Cola commercial when he was 19. A single instant, a single chance, and fate took yet another surprising turn. Everything changed after that commercial. The world took attention as soon as he signed a record deal and released his first single, Sweet Lady, in 1998. That voice, pure, emotive, and sweet, was heard on radio stations all across the world. You won't believe how quickly he rose from Watts streets to the top charts on Billboard. Women loved him. He was respected among men. R&B has discovered a fresh voice. This is the most absurd part though. His pain was not alleviated by fame. Despite Sweet Lady's success, Tyrese never lost sight of his roots. He continued to tell everyone that his grandmother was the reason he made the trip, to visit her and to watch out for her. And it wasn't only a breakup song. When he released How You Going to Act Like That in 2002, he used it to query the world. How can people change so quickly? How can allegiance vanish in an instant? Relationships weren't the only reason that song was composed. It was about everything he had witnessed as a child. The ones who fled after promising love, the family that disintegrated, the pals who changed sides as they became famous. Destiny continued to embellish his story though, because Tyrese began to detect something sinister beneath the limelight just when everything appeared ideal. The music, the fame, the triumph, the music business. The person he loved had changed. Tyrese had experienced what it was like to be famous, but nobody had told him that celebrity had a cost. The once warm spotlight was now blazing. People wanted the star, not the guy, wherever he went. Instead of songs that could heal, the record labels wanted singles that could become popular. Tyrese, however, was not designed for quick cuts. He was driven to pursue honesty rather than algorithms. Because of the type of agony he experienced, let me tell you, the battle for authentic R&B started like this. When no one was looking, quietly behind the cameras, Tyrese had already established his worth by 2013. He had released blockbuster films, platinum albums, and smash singles. However, no one could keep up with the rapid changes in the music industry. The radio was now playing auto-tune voices with catchy hooks instead of actual vocalists. At that point, Tyrese took a risk that nobody saw coming. He made the decision to team up with Tank and Genuine, two great R&B icons. The three of them formed a supergroup named TGT, which vowed to revive soul music. When fans learned about it, you won't believe how excited they were. Real music, real voices, and real passion. It had the sound of a whole genre coming back to life. Their album Three Kings was everything R&B fans had been waiting for when it came out. Pure intensity, unadulterated emotion, and silky harmonies. Here's the startling bit though. The industry was unconcerned. Suddenly, the record labels that had formerly pleaded with Tyrese for love songs turned their backs on him. Three Kings were now disregarded by the same radio stations that played Sweet Lady non-stop. Real singing seems to have vanished into thin air. It becomes intriguing at this point. We gave them real music, and they turned their backs on it, Tyrese subsequently stated. The endeavor that was meant to save R&J turned into yet another heartbreaking reminder of how things had changed. Then the darkness fell. Tyrese had no record deal at all for more than 2 years, from 2022 to 2024. No record company wanted to sign him. Not because he had lost his voice. Although his TikTok numbers weren't high enough, his voice was nonetheless perfect and forceful. Yes, you heard correctly, because he wasn't viral. The same man who gave the world Sweet Lady and How Are You Going to Act Like That was unable to get a deal. Take a moment to process that. In interviews, he stated it himself. My goal is not to become famous on TikTok. My goal is to create mature music. However, grown music was no longer of interest to the industry. They desired filters, short clips, and trends. Tyrese began speaking out at that point, criticizing the record companies and system executives. He became ruthlessly honest, and you won't believe it. He stated, "I'm making music for adults, people who've lived, loved, and lost. If you're 16 and making TikToks at my concert, security's removing you." He wasn't kidding. Tyrese desired a new meaning for his artwork. However, fate took yet another surprising turn. His personal life started to unravel while the world turned a blind eye to his music. At first, Tyrese and Samantha Lee's 2017 marriage appeared like a dream come true. She had all the qualities he believed he needed: strength, beauty, and intelligence. For a time, everything appeared to be ideal. They talked about love and family, posted photos, and conducted interviews. However, cracks were beginning to appear beneath the smiles. Samantha filed for divorce in 2020, and one of Tyrese's most agonizing periods of life ensued. This is the most absurd part: a demand for $20,000 per month in child support for their 8-month-old daughter was included in the court documents when they arrived. $20 a month. He was now being treated like a wallet. The same man who had once sung about loyalty. That number, I assure you, devastated him in ways that no heartbreak ever could. It was no longer about family, he said. It had to do with business. Later, Samantha publicly questioned his choices and referred to him as a lousy businessman. He was hit hard by every interview and every headline. Then the tipping point arrived, when the internet became a circus. In 2021, a video of Tyrese sobbing hysterically while repeatedly asking, "What more do you want from me?" emerges. Social media was unrestrained. Jokes, memes, and constant teasing. His suffering was now mocked by the same admirers who used to sing his tunes. This is the startling part though. It wasn't until months later that Tyrese realized there was such a thing as video. He was taking a lot of mental medication at the time due to the stress of the divorce. The adverse effects of the anxiety medication he had been administered were severe. He had no idea what people were laughing at for 4 months. The shame was too great when he finally saw it. Tyrese, however, spoke up rather than remain silent. He freely discussed therapy and mental health, acknowledged that he used Ativan for anxiety, and reminded everyone that black males too experience tears. It turned out to be one of his most impactful statements. The number of males who thanked him for expressing it is astounding. It was uncooked. Although it hurt, it was real. Tyrese hoped that things would finally settle down after the heartache and the criticism. However, life had other ideas. Suddenly, the same industry that had previously disregarded him wanted him back. They did it for the money, not because they thought he was a good man. You won't believe how soon after his suffering became public, the same individuals who abandoned him began phoning once more. They seemed to be trying to capitalize on his tragedy. This is where things become fascinating though. This time, Tyrese didn't rush for attention. He remained motionless and mute as he observed who approached him for love and who did so to make headlines. Tyrese started to rebuild in 2023, not with fame or fortune, but with a purpose. Deciding that he would never again plead for a deal or approval, he started his own independent label. "I will perform for those who still value authentic music," he declared. He meant it too. He released music straight from his home studio without a label or much advertising, passionate, soulful, and unadulterated. Fans started to take notice. The same internet that had made fun of him gradually began to support him once more. The most absurd thing is that Tyrese wasn't looking for forgiveness. All he wanted was tranquility. But that peace wasn't easily achieved. His online feud with Samantha, his ex-wife, kept coming up. The drama persisted through court updates, podcasts, and interviews. Whenever he attempted to proceed, he was dragged back into turmoil by another clip or comment. This is how fame turns into a trap, I tell you. Your best moments are ignored as the world replays your worst ones. Tyrese once stated that they seek headlines, not healing. He was correct. In a podcast, Samantha stated that she quit because she didn't feel emotionally secure. Tyrese retaliated by accusing her of abusing his notoriety. People couldn't stop following the tale as it became more messy every week. This is the startling part though. Tyrese continued to secretly pray for her. "She's the mother of my child," he stated in interviews. Millions of individuals were affected in different ways by the line, "I want her to be happy, but I'm not built to be broken forever." It was no longer rage, it was approval. Tyrese started to sound like a man who had accepted pain for the first time. Another tragedy struck, as if destiny wasn't already trying him. Paul Walker, his co-star in Fast and Furious and a dear friend, had already died years before. Tyrese believed the wounds had healed, but the 10th anniversary of Paul's passing brought them back. He broke down as he talked about their friendship in an emotional tribute he posted online. Paul was more than just a co-star, he resembled a sibling. Tyrese wept once more in front of the world, but this time no one made fun of her. It was honored. It dawned on fans that perhaps this dude wasn't that dramatic. Perhaps he was simply real. His entire outlook shifted at that same moment. Tyrese began traveling to churches, jails, and schools to speak about parenting and emotional healing. You won't believe how many young men started to follow him as a mentor rather than a celebrity after he urged them, "Don't be afraid to feel. Don't be afraid to cry. Real men cry." Once singing about loss, the same voice suddenly sang about forgiveness, faith, and overcoming adversity. Tyrese never feigned perfection, which is what sets this narrative apart. His fame did not conceal him. He didn't hide his scars or pretend to grin. As evidence that survival was feasible, he proudly donned them. His integrity served as his shield. Those who had previously ignored his tunes began to listen again. His music served as a form of rehabilitation in a noisy world, not because of fads. Then something unexpected happened. Tyrese revealed that he was working on an R&B project with a gospel influence that combined faith, love, and suffering. It was his method of uniting the heartfelt and the spiritual. People began to believe in him once more after he declared, "God gave me this voice not to be famous but to be a vessel." He seemed to have been given another chance by the cosmos. He needed one, but not the one he desired. However, fate took yet another surprising turn. Online reports of a purported new relationship started to circulate just as Tyrese was starting to find serenity, one that was allegedly made purely for publicity. Every picture, every description, every smile, the gossip blogs went crazy. Tyrese remained silent rather than refute or affirm. He ignored the noise for the first time in years. His quiet was more powerful than any interview, as he simply stated, "I'm not here to prove anything to anyone anymore." A new chapter has begun for Tyrese. As the man who had weathered every storm and remained upright, not as the haughty or the meme. He discovered that seclusion might sometimes bring more peace than adulation. Fans knew Tyrese Gibson's narrative was far from over as he started recording what he called his most intimate album to date. Tyrese was a damaged man by life, but by 2025 he had been rebuilt by faith. He was now someone the world could finally relate to because of the suffering, the losses, and the mockery. Here's the startling bit though. He didn't make a comeback on the red carpet or at an awards ceremony. His microphone, and his memories were the only things present throughout the quiet event that took place in a little studio. It was titled Beautiful Pain Volume 2 by him, an album that would serve as his parting message to the world on redemption, love, and sorrow. His energy was so different now that you won't believe it. The tone of desperation had vanished. The need to prove anything had vanished. Tyrese was at peace with himself, not with the outside world. During one of his live sessions he stated, "I used to chase validation. I only pursue healing now." Millions of his supporters were moved by those remarks because they were spoken by a man who had witnessed it all. Fortune, fame, forgiveness, and failure. It was a simple record. There was only unadulterated passion, devoid of major label marketing, auto-tuned singles, or staged music videos. Every song had the sound of a 3 a.m. journal entry when nobody was around. His voice was filled with grace rather than grief as he sang about his mother, his daughter, his failed marriage, and even the night he sobbed on camera. He transformed every heartache into harmony and every scar into a lyric. The narrative was unique. Because of that, Tyrese didn't conceal his history. Through it, he sung. Then destiny continued on in an unexpected direction. The album's significance, not its marketing, is what made it go viral. Globally, fans began posting snippets of his music, referring to it as the score of healing. Legends of R&B praised it, stating that it brought back memories of the time when songs had soul. All of a sudden, he was being approached by the same industry that had previously turned him away. Tyrese, however, took his time opening it. Now he was aware. His statement, "I don't need a deal to be real," sparked an online campaign. This is how life puts you to the test, I tell you. It restores what you lost in order to determine whether you still desire it. Tyrese was given the opportunity to sign big contracts once more, but he declined this time. He opted for serenity over pressure and ownership over attention. Rather of seeking accolades, he began coaching up-and-coming artists who wished to remain authentic. He gave them lessons on the value of authenticity and the perils of celebrity. One night, while performing the song that began it all, "Sweet Lady," he stopped in the middle of his performance and glanced up. More people were singing than ever before. His eyes welled up with tears of gratitude rather than regret. "I survived the fire," he muttered. It spoke it all in that instant. At last, everyone was listening instead of laughing. The most absurd part comes next. Tyrese didn't say goodbye at the end of his voyage after everything. Rather, he left a message for his fans. Don't flee your suffering. Give it a purpose, because what nearly killed you will one day be the reason someone else lives. Fans who identified with his narrative shared, printed, and even got that one sentence inked on their bodies, making it iconic. Tyrese Gibson's legacy ultimately extended beyond his work in music and film. It was about perseverance, about a guy who transformed his tears into testimony and refused to let life define him. He has experienced loss, heartache, betrayal, and public disgrace, but emerged more resilient, astute, and spiritual than before. His tears were formerly ridiculed by the world, but today they served as evidence of his authenticity, because sometimes a man's ability to feel is his greatest strength. The musician, actor, fighter, and survivor Tyrese Gibson retold his tale in this way: for truth, not for attention or praise. He fell, he recovered, and he got back up, letting everyone know that suffering is temporary. Something lovely is just getting started.